Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage. And today, as you can see, we are back in our project scene here, and I wanted to show you today how I went about creating these cards. Now, I'm working on the card system for the game where you'll be able to defeat enemies, complete missions, and you'll get some score, and you can spend that score, as you can see here, to purchase some of these cards. Now, the card system is about halfway complete as far as actually coding it, but I wanted to take a break from that a little bit and show you how I went about creating both the model for these cards and the actual texture for them as well. So we're going to go ahead and jump into that for today. Alright, so let's jump out of this and let's jump over to Maya, and I'll show you here in Maya how I went about creating the cards. Now, I wanted to take a quick moment to notate the size is based upon real-world poker cards with a little bit of a difference. This box here, you'll notice, is kind of strange and not really related to these cards. But this box represents one tile inside of our world. It is exactly 180 units by 180 units by some arbitrary depth. It doesn't really matter for this object. But the idea is I wanted to make sure that the topmost part of our card, where typically the picture is, I wanted that area to be able to be played physically onto the board so that it would encapsulate one tile here. And then we'd have a little bit of slop that would fade away or whatever. But the idea is that some of these cards you can actually play to the game board and affect specific tiles. You can summon an object or a character or something. So I want to make sure there was enough room for them. So that's really what drove the overall total size of this object. Now, again, they are based upon real-world sizing. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first, we want to create a box. And you just click up here, Create Cube, and then we're going to set its dimensions to 290 on the width, 440 on the height, and it only has a depth, these are paper thin, of 0.065, okay? And I believe one of these, if I look over here, is it this guy, or maybe, here he is. So this is actually a copy of a copy to try to, I wanted to lay these out for you so that you see each step. So here it is, 290 on the width, 440 on the height, and a depth of 0.065. And that will give you exactly this. Okay, then we're going to take that, and what I'm going to do is select the edges that are right on the very tip here. I'll show you the edge we're looking for. So if I go to my edge selection, and if I just drag a selection over top of all of this, now I can go, I'm going to hold Control and drag here. So now what I have selected is just this one edge, which is that, connecting point there at the corner. And that's what we want. We want all four of those, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and select everything. You can actually just select everything on the card and then just hold Control and drag one selection box this way and one selection box this way. And now I have all four of those corners and only those four corners. All right? Now what we want to do is we want to do a bevel. So I'm going to go over to my modeling toolkit here and select bevel. There we go, and you see it gets all kinds of crazy. That's way too much for what we want. So we want a 0.1, and then for my segments, I want 6 segments. Okay, and that's going to give me my nice rounded corners here. Now you can have fewer, you can have none if you want a straight corner, but for me, this is what I did, was 6 segments, and that's what gives us this nice round effect. Okay, I'm going to hit Q to commit that. Now over here, what we need to do is we need to do some tidying up of all of our vertices. We've got a ton of vertices in here, and we need to connect them all up. So the first thing we do is, with our edges still selected, I'm going to go ahead and do another selection like so. I'm going to hit Connect. There he is. And that's fine. We have slide of 0.5, segments of 1, pinch of 0, hit Q. And that gives us a nice divide right down the middle. So we do the same thing this way. One of those, connect, and there we go. So now here's an example of this guy, and I just brought him over here. And what we've been doing here, you can see we have these extra lines here. We need to connect all these things up. So I'm going to go to my vertex mode here. And for me, that's 1 on the keyboard. I've remapped things for myself to make it a little bit easier. And we need to connect basically each set of pairs. So what I'm going to do is go to multi-cut, and now this tool is super handy because it will automatically snap to certain things. So for example, I need to cut from this vertex right here all the way over to this vertex on the opposite side. So I just click the 2 and it's done. There you go. So I'm going to right click to commit that, I'm going to the next one down the list. This one to this guy, right click, he's done. This one to this guy, right click, and he's done. Now we need to go both directions as well. So if you have an object like this that is quite tall, one thing you can do is I could select here, and I can freely move around and get myself better positioning and say, to this guy, please. There you go. So we're going to keep going with that until we've connected everything up on both sides. And what you're going to end up with is something like this, where you'll get these nice little packs of 9 right there. That's a good way to tell that you're doing it right. Little pack of 9 vertices when they crisscross. Now you will notice, and the keen-eyed amongst you will have already noticed, they'll say, Matt, you forgot one. Right here in this corner here. We should really connect from this to this. And the reason I'm not going to is because it's not really necessary. The engine will triangulate the mesh for us. So we're going to end up with basically a line from here to here, from here to here, from here to here. Every other one of these is quads, and this is a quad right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what it will do is it'll automatically put a line in between here for us. So that's one less thing we have to worry about. Okay, so with that all done, what we can do is I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to reset his UVs just so you can see what it looks like to have nothing. Okay, so there, he's all reset. So now, once we have the object complete and we've cut everything up, in order to unwrap this, it's very easy inside of Maya. All I'm going to do is hit this button here. This is the automatic projection. Okay, you can also find this, I believe, under UV automatic. Okay, so I'm just going to say, click that button. The screen will go crazy because it's trying to project all these different planes in different ways. I'm just going to hit Q to say, yep, I believe you, we're good, let's move on. So now if I do a preview of the UVs, take a look. It's automatically packed these in a really nice manner for us. So this is the front of the card, this is the back of the card, and then these are the edges that make up the top and side edges here. So top and bottom, or two sides, top and bottom rather, pardon me. Now, one thing I will note is with my card, this shell rather was upside down. So if I go to shell and select this guy, I had to do a couple of these rotates to get him right side up again. Not a big deal. There it is. It's all set. So now let's go ahead and export our UVs so that we can make our texture and then it will line up exactly with our model. Okay, so we're going to go over to polygons and down to UV snapshot. And you're going to tell it where you want it to go. The size, we're working in 4K. It's probably way overkill and we can reduce it a lot, but I just worked in 4K by default, just kind of a habit for now. Keep aspect ratio is fine. The color, this determines the color that the UV lines are going to be in your image. I think my default was something like a weird purple. I don't know, I just changed it to something really, really bright so I can see it against black or against gray. I have a lot of gray in my color palette. So you just select all that and then click OK, and it will export it for you. I've already done that, so I'm not going to do that here, but that's how that works. Okay, so that's all we have to do inside of Maya here. And once your card is completely done, I left it with a center pivot. If your object does not have a center pivot, if say it was something like this, it got kind of messed up, there are options in here to center the pivot. I've actually docked it to my board here, so I can just say here and say center pivot. And there you go. And then we're going to export that, and I just called it card.fbx for now. So to export, we're going to say File, Export Selection, and you can see here I already have one card.fbx. So you would just type that in here, card, and then click Export. Okay? So that's all done. We're all done with Maya. So let's move on to Photoshop. Okay? So here's Photoshop, and here is our final texture here, which looks really good, I think. I think it looks fantastic. So I'm going to step you through every step of the way of how I went about creating all of this. All right. So we're going to begin with the shield shape. Then we're going to move on to the sword. And then we'll move on to the card itself, creating the frame and all these different things. And the text, I'm not going to go over, but that's just, you know, whatever kind of text you want in there. And the image, I'll talk about how I just found an image based upon one of our previous videos. Okay. So to begin with, what we need to do is we're going to open up the UVs that we just created. All right, so I'm going to say double click and say here's my UVs and open them. All right, there they are. Now you won't be able to see much at first because the lines are very, very thin. Actually, it's showing up pretty well on the video over there. The lines are very, very thin, so it's hard to see them at first. But let's rename our layer. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Let's rename our layer to UVs. And then let's click New, Call this layer background. Just our background, if I could spell background so that we can see what we're doing. Let's move that to the background. And I'm going to fill this with black. Okay, so fill, fill. There you go. Now you can start to see these lines really showing up nicely. Okay, so we need to create a couple of shapes in here. We're going to create a solids. So if I go to my selection, my magic wand selection, and I'm going to select just the background. Okay, and you notice it'll fill in all around the card, but not actually on the card itself. So let's do a select inverse. I'm going to say new layer, and we're going to call this layer solids. And I'm going to switch my color to white, and with a paintbrush, with a very large paintbrush size, I'm just going to paint in my cards. Okay. Now what this does is this allows me later on now, if I need to select an area of my card, I'll show you how this works. I do select deselect. So say we're working on something and I want to make sure it's only on the back of the card, right? Well, then I can go to my solids layer and I can use that as a selection bias. I can say click here. Now I've got just the back of the card selected. Perfect. Okay. So all that is well and good, and we're going to need that, but let's put that on hold for a moment, and we're going to work on just some of these shapes. All right. So let's create a new layer, and we're going to go over here and create a custom shape. So this guy right here, and up here, let's select the heart. Is that the right heart that I wanted, or is it more? No, it's this heart. This heart here, not this one that's super curvy, but this one here, okay? And I have white selected, so what I'm going to do is just drag out a big heart. Whoop, something like that. Okay. So now, this heart is going to be the original part of our shield shape here. So you see this curve here? That's this curve here. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a copy of this heart. So let's go here and we're going to drag to this new, and that makes a duplicate. Okay, so now that we have that copy, let's do Control T. It's the default for transform, and I'm going to rotate it upside down. Now that I have it selected still, I'm going to go up here and say, make this heart 200% bigger. And I'm going to hit enter twice to commit that. So now we have two hearts, the one here and this one that got real big. And I'm going to lower the opacity of that a little bit so that we can see through it, okay? Now let's move this guy up. Move him up, 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 up. I'm holding shift and up arrow, and that is bringing my heart upwards. Come on, keep going, keep going. So now you can see where we're getting at here. I'm going to go up, up, up until I reach this point where I want the highest point of the shield shape on that outer corner to be. So something probably close to that. Okay, maybe a little higher, more like that is what I had. All right. So now what we need to do is we need to put these two on top of each other so that we can actually select, and it's a little strange, but it'll work out. You'll see. So put this opacity back to full, and it doesn't look like much right now. But now with this selected, I'm going to come down here to the effects, and I'm going to choose color overlay. And the default is fine. It's going to give us a red. That's fine. We don't really care. We'll say OK. Now I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to hit Control E, or if you right click, you can say, where's merge layers? Okay, I'm going to merge them together. So now I don't have the ability to change the colors anymore. It's one whole image, but that's fine because now if I do my selection, I want to select this, and I'm going to turn my selection on to additive, and I'm also going to select this little black spot there. And there we have our shield shape, okay? There we go. So we have our two shield shapes now. So we have to fill this in. So I'm going to create a new layer. And with white selected again, yep, and my paintbrush, I'm going to paint and fill in the heart. Or fill in the shield, rather. There we go. Fill it all in. So now we don't really need this anymore, so we can just hide it, or we can get rid of it entirely. We'll leave it there for now in case we need to reference it. So this is our shield shape, and that's really good. So let's call this shield. There we go. Now we need two of these because we're going to create this this border to it as well. You see the little border we have here? So let's create another one of these. So I'm going to duplicate this. And with this selection still in place, and we're on this top one, let's call this shield frame. Okay? And let's go up to select, modify, contract. And I'm going to contract by 100 pixels. Say OK. And you'll see that brought it in from all sides uniformly. Perfect. Okay. So now let's hit the delete key. And we've deleted the interior of that frame. So if I deselect this, so if I hide our shield, you'll see we just have this frame. Perfect. Okay. So now let's go ahead and create the rest of the frame. With the frame selected, I'm going to go to our effects and I'm going to click the top here that says blending options, because that's going to bring up our box so we can select everything all at once. Okay, so here are the settings that we want. We're going to go down to bevel and emboss, and we want an inner bevel, and we want this chisel to be hard. We want a hard shape to this because it's supposed to be metal, it's supposed to be, you know, formed. We don't want it to be soft. We'll keep the depth at 100, that's fine. We do want it to go up. We want the size, we want that to be 100. And let's see, size 16 on the soften. We'll do that, 16. There we go. So you can see what we've got going on here so far. That's looking pretty good, right? It looks like metal that's been formed. Now let's take a look at our angle here. We're going to put this to 120. We want it to be up in this corner. Then for our altitude, we're going to make sure this is 25. There we go. So that brings it in just a little bit. Excellent. Now our highlight mode is going to be set to normal. There we go. And our shadow mode is going to be set to multiply, which it is, but we are going to lower the opacity down to 50. Something like that. There we go. Okay. So we're not done. Let's go down to color overlay. Let's put a color on this. And the color we're going to choose is going to be 222, 188, and 0 for the RG and B. Okay, and we say OK, and there we go. Look at that. There we go. Okay, so that's all set. So now one more thing, we need a pattern overlay. So let's go to our pattern overlay. And the color, the color overlay does need to be set to overlay. So now our pattern overlay, this is the important part. I'm not sure if these stones came with Photoshop. I don't think I ever did anything to them, but maybe I found them somewhere. So there are lots of patterns you can choose in here. So you might need to choose an alternate if you don't have these stones. But if I look at these stones, these are some pretty nice stone materials here, different kind of gravel and all kinds of things. I think that they came with it though. But I ended up using two of these back and forth. I kind of like the way they look. So the first one is this first one here, has a very strange name, which makes me think that I got it from somewhere on the internet. But we choose that, choose one of these, and you can see it's giving us just some nice breakup, a little bit of light and dark, a little bit of weathering to it. So I just chose this first one. There are plenty other patterns in here that you can choose. You just have to change the scale a little bit. So some of these come with Photoshop, some don't. And of course you also have a lot of these. The color paper and the artistic surfaces are really good for the same kind of thing. So you can play around with these, add these into your list here, and find one that you like the way that it looks on here once you've added it. And if it's too small, you can play with the scale here to change the scaling back and forth to make it fit your overall shape if you have a smaller texture or a larger texture. But for me, I'm going to be choosing this stone one here, and there we go. Okay, so this guy's all done, and we're all set with everything for this guy here. So multiply, color overlay, pattern overlay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to say okay to that. So that frame is all set. Now, let's go back to our shield here, and let's bring him back. You see he's behind there. He's not looking so hot. He looks very flat. So let's add some to him. So effects, blending options, and here are my notes for this. So for this guy, we have an inner glow. So let's select that. And we're going to set this to multiply. Oop, not darken, multiply. Pardon me. So with inner glow, multiply 75 and 0 for the opacity and the noise. He's going to be black. So let's bring all this all the way down. There we go. Okay, that looks good. Now for we're going to choose softer here, but we do want to choose edge, not center, but edge. And then for the choke, we're going to do 45. And for the size, we're going to do 250. Okay, that will really bring this in, and we start to create some really nice. I don't really even mind that the corners get a little weird here because we're going to do a lot to this overall, and I think that looks really good. Okay, size 250, and I did not touch the quality at all. Okay, let me modify my notes very quickly here for you. Okay, so now we're going to also add a gradient overlay to this guy. So that's already looking a lot better, but let's go ahead and modify it. So our gradient overlay is again going to be multiply, and we're going to set him to 100%. Very good. Now our gradient here, what we're going to change is we're going to make this a black, white, black. So I'm going to click in the middle here and drag this until it's at 50. And then I'm going to click here and I'm going to change the color to black. Okay, so now you'll see that our gradient goes from black to white to black. And that's a really nice way to create a little bit of a fake of a bump in our texture. So it looks like it kind of fades off both sides. So we'll say OK to that. And then we do want linear, but we're going to change our angle here to 180. And the scale we'll leave at 100. So now it goes across our shield. See, that's looking a lot better. Okay, so that's all good. Now we're going to click OK to him. Now we're going to start creating our swords here. All right. So now to create our sword, we need to import a guide because we need this shape. So what I'm going to do here is open up my textures, and if I go into some of my references and all my different things here, I'm going to find where we were creating the shapes for the dice originally. Okay, so let's go and look at our dice. Here we go, dice icon build. There it is. So these are the different icons for the dice that I created. And if I just look through here, I find my sword right here. So I'm going to use this guy as a guide. So I'm going to say Control A, Control C. We can close that now. Let's bring this guy in, Control V to paste. Now, obviously he's too small and he's not in the right place, so let's do Control T. And by holding Shift, I'm going to click and drag and make this sword really big. And we'll say something like that's pretty good, maybe a little bit bigger. Because I do want them to go past the background a little bit. There we go. Something like that. There we go. So we hit enter when we're done. And now this is our guide, so we can start creating our swords over top of this. Excellent. Okay. So let's create a new layer, and we'll call this sword guide. And we'll create a new layer above him. Now to create the handle here, we need to use another custom shape. So custom shape. And this one was pretty neat. I was kind of surprised how well this worked out. But I'm going to use the exclamation mark. Okay? And click and drag. And I'm going to try to create one that is approximately that shape right off the bat. So what I'm doing here is trying to make sure that the top part of the exclamation point, not the straight part, not the little dot at the bottom, is roughly the size of our handle here. There we go. So I'll let that go. And I'll move this into position. Control T and rotate them. Try to line them up. Something like that. It doesn't have to be totally perfect. You know, we're adjusting it as we go. It's looking pretty good. Let's move them down a little bit. Something like that will probably be pretty good. There we go. Right there. And you'll notice that we have this part now, and then it kind of continues here. That's okay because we're going to put the hilt or the handguard here across this. And then the sword is going to go on top of all of that. So, very good. All right. So there we go. So now, yeah, rotate and place it. We're going to add some layer styling to this guy, okay? So again, down here, blending options. And here are our options. So we're going to have an outer glow. So choose that. And it's going to be set to multiply. 75% 0, solid black. You'll start to see that this is, some of these things do repeat quite a bit. So that's all set. We do want softer, a spread of 0, but a size of 15. Okay? And this just helps us kind of have a little bit of a gradient at the end so that we sort of hide those rough edges. Okay? There we go. Now we want a gradient overlay. And for this guy, we're going to say multiply. 100% is fine. A gradient, again, we're going to do a black, white, black. So I'm going to choose this and go right in the center, and it's white. You can always click here to make sure it's white. Click here, black. Let's do that all the way down. Okay, very good. Linear, of course. Now the angle depends on the angle of how you went about creating this, what angle it ended up at. For me, it ended up being 130. So that looked good for me, but let's see here. Oh, minus 130, pardon me. Minus 130. There we go. So it's just a little bit of gradient across here. Now I changed the scale here to 220. And that's what really kind of brought that shading in here. See? So there we go. Okay, that's all well and good. And we're done with our blending options for now. Oh, wait, no, we do have a pattern overlay. Pardon me, of course. Energy between, I chose 220. Oh, wow, it won't let me do more than that. Okay, we'll adjust it. We'll roll the punches. There we go. Okay, so pattern overlay. So for the pattern overlay, turn that on. I'm actually going to choose a herringbone, and I'm pretty sure this comes with Photoshop. The herringbone is right here. I always look for this thing, which looks like squares inset amongst themselves, and I choose the one beneath it. So I'm going to choose that pattern. It's set to normal, and I'm going to set this down to 50%, something like that. There we go. And this is a scale of 220. This is the thing, 220. There we go. And this is a nice pattern because it definitely looks like a bit of like a wire wrapping. It looks metallic, and it just looks cool. Okay, so that guy's all set. Now what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this layer, okay? So I'm going to duplicate this by dragging down to here and say, there we go. So now we have two of them, and what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new layer above each of these. And what I'm going to do is this bottom one and top one, they're identical at the moment, but I'm going to select the blank layer and the version of each of these and merge them together. Okay, so right click, you can say merge layers. For me, Control E. Okay, so there's one. I'm going to hide that for now. Select these two, merge them down. Okay, so you see we have the one there, and then if I hide that one, here's one here. So we have two of them, right? And let's see, delete merge layers. There we go. Yeah, okay. So for the top one, I'm going to select, and I'm going to delete. I'm going to select this bottom thing here and delete it, okay? And for the bottom one, I'm going to select and delete the top. So that way we have each one individually now. So if you notice, this is just that top part and this is just that bottom part. Very cool. Okay, so for this bottom part, I wonder, can I do this now, or is it going to balk at me? Oh no, it's still good. So for the bottom one, we're going to do a gradient overlay again and set it to the -130 so that we can create our black, white, black again. Okay, so there we go. And this guy is set to black. There we go. Just to kind of get a little bit of that gradient in there. As you can see here, right there, a little bit of a gradient. Okay, so that's for the bottom one. So let's call this Hilt Connect. And this guy, we will call Handle. Okay, there we go. So each piece is its own layer and its own set. Perfect. So now we need to create this guy in here, okay? And that's the hilt. So let's create a new layer. And for the hilt, let's see. Here we are. We're going to choose a new custom shape from here. And we're going to choose banner 3, which I believe is this guy here. Is that banner 3? Banner 3, yep. So I'm going to choose him. I've chosen you, thank you. And we want to, again, drag out. We have to drag horizontally, but we want roughly this shape. So I'm going to drag and kind of create roughly that. There we go. So let's move them into position. We can rotate them. And again, it doesn't have to be exact, but we're just going to get close. That's pretty good. And right about there. Sure, we'll go with that. Okay, so let's call this guy Hilt. Now the hilt has his own layer style, so let's do that. So I'm going to choose layer style down here, blending options. Okay, so lather, rinse, repeat. Let's do an outer glow with normal. Again, this one's going to be 100%, 0, solid black. So let's bring that down. Okay. Then we do choose softer, 0, and 75 for the size. Quality is unchanged. Okay. Now we're going to go to an inner glow. Choose this guy here. Again, normal, 100%, 0, solid black. Bring this guy down. There we go. We are going to choose softer. We're going to choose center this time with a choke of 0 and a size here of 250. There we go. Yep. Creating a nice little kind of inward divot there. You'll see we'll stack that on top of some other effects in just a moment here. Quality is unchanged. We don't change anything there. Now, to the gradient overlay. Again, we're going to choose multiply. And then this is going to be set to 100, and we are going to do a black, white, black. So let's choose that, this, choose black. There we go. You start to see that really nice effect we're getting going on there. And our angle is going to be minus 128, was what I had for mine. Might change depending on the exact angle you put your thing at. Scale 100%. And again, I'm going to put a pattern overlay. Normal. I'm only going to choose 50% this time. And again, I'm going to choose this stone pattern that I like from here just because it makes it look more like it's metal. And scale is 100%. There we go. Okay, we're almost there. We're almost done with the sword. So let's bring this down a little bit more. Now we're going to create the blade, okay? Let's create a new layer. We'll call it blade. And this is pretty simple. We're going to use the polygon shape tool here, so this one here. And I'm just going to draw our shape. So start here in this corner. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to click about a bit. I'm trying to get close, you know. We have to do our best. There we go. So click there and across. Okay, so with that selected, we're going to go back to our paintbrush, which you can hit B on the keyboard at any time. And then we have white selected, so we're going to fill this in. There we go. So that is our blade shape. And of course, you guessed it, we're going to be putting some layer styling on this. So let's go ahead and do that. Blending options. Okay, so there's quite a bit here. So we're going to choose drop shadow, multiply 50%. Our distance is going to be, let's see, angle of 90. Okay, I don't know why angle of 90, but we'll see. Distance of 50, spread of 0, size of 100. I see, 90 going straight down. I understand now. Okay. And of course, the quality, I never really touched the quality. Okay, so now we have outer glow normal. This is only going to be 25 on the percentage, 0. And we want solid black, so let's do that. There we go. And we do want softer with a spread of 10 and a size of 25. Okay, that looks good. Now, inner glow, this inside of the blade, we're going to choose normal. 75 is fine, 0 is fine. This one we want solid white. Oh, I threw you for a loop. You thought I was going to say black. Solid white. We do want to change this from softer to precise. And we're going to choose a center with a choke of 30 and then a size of 65. Okay, there we go. Now, gradient overlay, multiply 100%, and we're going to do a black, white, black. Let's click right in the middle. There we are. All the way down, all the way down. There we are. Click OK. You see how nice our sword blade is looking now? It's all these different things layered on top of each other. You just have to know what the right settings are. Okay, so that guy's all set. Linear. I'm going to give him an angle of, it says here, 53. There we go. And then a scale of 61. There we go. Just a little bit of a hint to each side. Want to keep the sword mostly white and silver and gray because it is metal. Don't want to get too dark. All right, now, finally, let's go to our pattern overlay. Here we are. And this is going to be normal. We're going to set this to 25. And I'm going to use the same stone again that I like. There we go. And the scale we'll set as 100. That's fine. So there we go. So that's that. Now, I'm going to duplicate this layer. And I'm going to call this blade, what did I call this? Blade angle. Okay. And now I'm going to edit its styling. Okay, so I'm going to the effects here. Now for this one, we're going to do everything off except for the gradient. So I'm going to turn all of this off. So we don't want this, don't want this, don't want this. All we care about is the gradient. So for the gradient, what we're going to do is edit our gradient here. I'm going to start at 0 and we're going to switch to at 49 right there. I'm going to choose just a little bit of a gray somewhere in there. And you'll see what that does. It creates almost like this pinch right in the center there, like a little bit of a pinch. And then white at 50 and then 100 all the way out there. So I'm going to do that, and then we have to change the angle a bit. So let's mess with the angle just a little bit. Let's see. Maybe we need more like that. No. Let's see. There we go. We want the angle to be right down the center of the sword there. Perfect. So for me, that ended up being 47. There we go. We say OK. Now for the blade angle layer, we're going to change its layer blending option up here. We're going to change that to multiply. So that way we still get all the details of the rest of our blade from down here, but on top of that. There we go. So our sword is complete. So I'm going to find our guide here, and I'm going to hide that so we can see this is what we have working so far. I think it looks pretty fantastic. Now, what I'm going to do is select everything involved in the sword itself and put that into a group by itself. Okay, sword. There we go. So we have all of that set. So to get this, we're going to have to merge some things down together. So I can merge this entire group. So I can hit Control E, and now I have the sword all as one image, okay? So now I'm going to hit Control J, which is the keyboard shortcut for duplicate, and we've duplicated the sword. So now we go to Edit, Transform, Flip horizontally. Now you'll notice they don't flip quite nicely, so we do have to shift it over. So hold Shift and right arrow. And I'll move this over until they kind of line up so that it looks like they're basically in the center. A little bit more, yeah. I think that looks pretty good. There we go. So now they're all together. So we have these two swords. We can get rid of our guide. We don't need that any longer. And we have our shield frame. We have our shield. And so all of that's good. So let's select all of that, and we'll just merge that all down together. Okay, so we'll let that go. There we go. So let's call this shield and swords. Okay. All right, so that was the hardest part is done. I will get rid of this as well. This was our heart shapes that we used. So with the hardest part done, now we can start putting this together and then doing all the background stuff with the cards. Okay. Let's go ahead and move this down a little bit more. Move my guide. I have my notes over here. I'm going to move those down just a little bit. Yep. Make it copy. Yep. Edit with layer. Newly. Here we go. So we're going to do a little bit of some editing here. So if we choose our shield and swords, let's give this a few options, okay? So options for this guy are going to be a drop shadow, multiply, 75%, 90, 5, 0, 5, yeah, all that's fine. Outer glow, so we're going to choose normal, 100%, we'll choose black again, to give this a little bit of a nice presence on top of a background layer. Choose 0 and 50. Okay, that's good. There we go. So now this guy's all set and ready to be placed. So let's hide him for now and start making the cards. So we bring up our solids. We see we have here. So let's go ahead and make the outer frame for the back of the card, so then we can put this guy in place. So to do that, I'm going to select. Again, we chose this so we can select that. There we go. So we can say new, do card back, and I'm just going to fill with white. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to say card back frame. All right. Now if I go back to my selection, can I do that? Or no, it took away my selection. That's okay. We'll select it again, and we're going to do select, modify, contract 100 pixels, yep, and say delete. Okay, so now we have this frame, which is just this part here, and we want it to be very similar to the shield. In fact, we're just going to go ahead and copy from the shield, and I think we can't do that because I merged everything, but I can come over here. I might be able to do that. So forgive me for cheating. I'm going to come over to my card and choose the, yeah, there we go, copy layer style. Can I do that across? Paste layer style. There we go. So in your pursuit of this, I apologize I didn't mention it earlier, if you leave everything alone and don't merge it down until you're all done, you can go back to a previous card here and I could actually copy the layer style. So I right click and say copy layer style. I can then paste it to another object. So if you leave just one behind, then you can actually copy and paste and then you have this sort of thing. So that's a lot easier. Okay, so let's choose our card back. And for the card back, we're going to do some, let's see, fill, yeah. Background layer, layer style, there we go. Okay, so for the card back, let's add some layer styling to that. So this guy, we're going to choose inner glow, so right here, 100, normal, 0, again, solid black. Yeah, we're just making like a nice background inset kind of thing. We do want softer and edge, choke of 0, size of 50. There we go. Maybe a little bit more. Let's bring that out just a little bit more. Maybe like 75. Okay, there we go. And then pattern overlay. And again, I'm going to choose the same stone. There we go. Just that looks nice. Okay. So that's for that. Now, if we bring back our shield and sword now, you can see where we're getting at. We can actually start to line this up. So let's use our UVs to line this up for us. So if I turn on the UVs and bring them to the very top, above everything else, you'll see where these lines end up now. So we're going to create some guide layers inside of Photoshop because that will allow us to snap objects. So I'm going to zoom in here so I can see this center where the two lines intersect. And if you don't already have your rulers showing, I'm going to go here and say View Rulers. Okay, so that these things will appear here with all the numbers. If you click and drag from inside there, I can drag this line, and wherever I leave that line, it'll make a white line. It's not actually there in your text or anything, it's just there for Photoshop. You can see them here in mine. And I'm going to click over here and drag and put it right there. So now that's an object, almost like a pivot point that you can snap objects inside of Photoshop to. So for example, if I zoom out here, and let's hide our UVs, let's unhide our shield and swords, and I'm going to Control T and hold Shift and drag and make this guy a lot smaller. So maybe more like that. Hit Enter. Now if I hit V on the keyboard, that's to move things around. You may notice when I get to here, it kind of like snaps in place. It's like it's sticky right about there. Perfect, because that's where I want it, the center of the back of my card. And that's what these lines are for. It makes things a little sticky when you try and move them around through that area. Okay, so with that all set, what we're going to do now is let's go back and shield and sword, back of the card is done, back of the card is done. So these two are the back of the cards. Let's do a group for that, Control G to make a group, and say back. There we go. So now, to make the front of the card, it's very similar, and you'll notice that if I go over here and look at my card layout, so this was what I originally did. So with the card layout, all I did was create these shapes, and I'll do that now over here to show you. So over here, I'll create a new layer, and I'll choose a shape. I'm just going to choose a regular rectangular shape, okay? And I'm going to choose some random color. In fact, we'll choose these colors. There we go. So all I did for this was click and drag, and there we go. So once you're happy with the size and shape, say something like that. Create a new layer, new color, something like that. Rectangle, and I'm going to choose from here and say, make this more rectangular, something like that. There you go. So now we have our selection areas for these things. Now the rest becomes quite easy. So for example, to create all of this, we already have this layer style applied. So if we come back over here and we see our, let's see, on our back of the card, our back frame there, we're going to reuse that. So we want to make some selections here. So selecting inside of Photoshop is really easy. So let's make a new group here. We'll put these in it. Call this front. Okay, so this is the front of the card that we're working on now. And I'm going to create a new layer. And for this layer, I want to make a couple selections. So I'm going to go down to my solids layer, and I'm going to select that whole thing, right? But what I want is really this minus these two. So now, if I hold Alt, I think, is it Alt? No, wait. Alt, Control, there we go. Control and Alt, pardon me. And I'm going to click on this guy and say, my current selection minus this. My current selection, click again, minus this. And look what I get. I get exactly what I was looking for. Let's go here, and we'll do a fill, and I'm going to choose white, and fill that in. Okay, let's call this front card frame. Ooh, I need to learn to spell the word frame. There we go. So that guy's all set, and now it's not a big deal to fill that in, because all we have to do is go back to our back card frame and say copy layer style and paste layer style. Work smarter, not harder, right? There we go. We got all that in place. That's looking nice and good, so we're all set there. Now that that's complete, we need to fill in a picture. We need to fill in some text. And that's pretty easy to do. The picture, I just chose one from, let's see, here he is. See if I can select this whole layer. And just bring it over here. Yeah, there we go. So this picture is just from a previous episode. I just chose, you know, cut it out, and all I do is put it in here. Now this is underneath of the frame here, so he's already in place. That's all looking good. So that's just our whatever picture you want to put in there. So we'll call this card picture. You can put any picture you want. There we go. And for the text, all I did was, it's literally just a text. So let's see here. I'll put it above everything. So right here, let's call this text. So for the card text, you choose the text tool. Click and drag for the area in which you want the text to appear. And I type, this is card sample text describing what the card does when played. Okay? Now you can't see it right now because it's white text on a white background. But if we change the background, there you go, you can see it now. And you have to massage the text and figure out, I don't like when it does this where it cuts off words, so you have to figure out a way to handle that. Maybe something more like that. There you go. And for the text effect, you see how it looks all nice over here? What I did for that was, right here, so that's this guy, yes. So let's take a look at these blending options. It's just a stroke at the moment. So it's just a stroke of 10 pixels on the outside. So nothing fancy, but we can copy it here. So let's say copy, and we'll bring it over here, say paste. There you go. Just makes it stand out a little bit more. And for interest of time, I don't want this to drag on too long for you guys. We're not going to do these two, but these two were created in much the same way. All I did was create a shape, and then we would do the same thing we did here with the frame. So you start with a solid outline, so something like this, and then I did a stroke, and I'll show you one because I want to make sure you understand and it's not crazy. So let's do one together. We'll do this guy up here. Yeah, there you go, perfect. So to create this guy up here, so this is the banner for the name. So I'll choose that, so that's a solid shape there. I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to throw a stroke on it and say, I think it was 30. Oh no, maybe even more, it was 50. Yeah, pretty solid stroke. Let's just go full 100. A little much. 75, nah, 50 is fine. Okay, so throw a stroke on there and say OK. And now what you can do is this top one, if I right click and say rasterize layer. Now the one with the stroke is a full layer by itself. So what I can do now is select the innards and just delete them. Oops, that did not seem to want to work the way I expected it. I just want the inside of that layer to go away. Yeah, it's not like it. Oh yeah, because it's still there. Okay. Pardon me. So the way to do that is you create a new layer above it, and when you merge the two together, it gets rid of all your layer styling. Now it's a solid layer. Now we go ahead and delete it, and we have just the frame. Okay. So with this showing, you can put any kind of effects you want on here. For example, you could do like a gradient for the background. Let's reduce that a bit, something like that. And then for this top layer here, this is, I always call this a frame for whatever it is you're working on. This guy that was the stroked layer. And if I go to my back of the card here, the frame here, so if I copy layer style and come up to this frame and say paste layer style, There you go. Now all we have to do is turn off the layers there. It's still coming up as like red. Don't really like that. For some reason it just looks very, oh, that's the color it was. Okay, so to fix that, that's very easy. So to fix that, we're going to turn off all of the effects for a moment. So let's deselect everything. I'm going to select just the red. Okay, now if you paint it white, that's why white is such an important color for this kind of thing. We do white on that, and now when we bring back all of our effects, it looks correct because we're building a color basis on top of white instead of already tinting what we did before. So that's how I did that for these. And for the little slits here for the sides of the card, I'll show you how that works. So for the slits of the card, all I did was went to my solids, I did a select, and we're going to have to zoom in a little bit to do this. Okay, so zoom in a little bit, and we'll select these guys. So we'll say one for you, one for you, one for you, one for you. Oh, gotta have the additive turned on for that. So select all of these, and then just somewhere that is going to be prevalent, you can say new layer, and let's zoom back out so we can see them all. There we go. And again, brush, paint them all white, and then we'll just paste that layer styling. But the important thing in here is I'm going to go into here, and I'm actually going to turn off the bevel because I don't want any depth information being added strangely to the edges. I want this to be pretty solid, but I still want them to have even maybe the glow we don't need as well. But we do want the color, and we want the pattern of the brick or the stone, whatever it is. We do want those on there. Okay, so there you go. So then, add your text in here, change the text whatever you want. This thing was created in much the same way, and I'm going to provide all of this. So all of this will be available to you. You'll be able to actually take this and use this exact image. So if we jump back over to Unreal, let's take one final look at our cards here. So here they are, the final product. They look really good, and our texture here was brought in. Let me open that up. I'll bring that over here. So you see this is our final texture, and I've left some room up here because my cards are going to have a couple of tricks up their sleeves, so I need some room for some extra pieces, so that's what that's all for. But here they all are, and then we'll have to edit this so that each one gets, the material will get built so that we can substitute in the text will actually be edited by the Unreal Engine instead of actually numbers being embedded into the text. And then we'll be doing it that way. That way we can kind of build a whole deck of cards pretty quickly. And these are the same cards, so if I rotate this over on itself, you'll see that it's the same card both sides. And you see this was a previous version before I did the flip of the UVs. We talked about that earlier. See how the card should be face up, this should be the top. But when I rotate it over, the top is down here because it's not quite correct. So that's what it should have been. Okay? But eventually, very shortly, we will have a whole deck of cards, and you'll be able to have all these in your hand. There'll be something like this if I do Alt and drag out. You'll have like a whole hand of cards to choose from. So there we go. There's 2, 3, so something more like that. So you'll be able to choose which card you want to play to the board, and they will not interpede with each other. And you'll be able to play a card to the board, and it will line up exactly with a space. So the whole card will be like this. And then you'll be able to put something down on the board. So who knows? We'll see as that comes up, and we'll do some more with that next time. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. Again, all of this, the final, I'll give you the Photoshop file as well as the final texture. That'll all be available on the website, and there'll be a link in the description to download that. And then all you have to do in here is just create a standard material and assign it to your object. Import the object, all standard settings, nothing fancy with that. I mean, here's the model. I can show you real fast. There's nothing special about them. I just imported them. Just straight import. No other details needed. And then assign it, and there you go. So I'll also provide the model as well. So if you guys have trouble with any of this, you'll have a reference to it. Go back and check out the video and, pause, rewind, whatever you need. And if you guys have any questions, I'm always here. So as always, guys, if you have any questions, please let me know. And if not, then until next time, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.